Hello and welcome to another episode of the Deceptive Reality Podcast, maybe one nearing the end times.
Oh man, Nick. Don't even get me started, Nick.
I know. I'm Apocalypse Nick, and with me
Is the secondary apocalyptic Bert.
the Aftermath Bert.
The Aftermath Bert. What's going on, everybody? Hey, welcome to the Doggone Podcast. Listen, we back up in this mug.
Mm-hmm. And we're not bringing you any good news this week.
No, listen. We got to 2027, folks.
Right. That's right.
Hopefully.
Well, you know what? I'll give them a piece of good news before
I'm
we
ready.
get into it. Yeah.
Let's hear it.
So, guess who's back after a few years on vacation?
Slim Shady?
Maybe.
Guess who's
If
back?
Slim Shady is the Loch Ness Monster.
What? Oh, Nessie back?
Yeah, Nessie's back.
Oh, man.
Posts for some new pictures. I think getting ready for the big spending they're doing on investigating the Loch Ness again, looking for him or her.
Well, didn't they just have a movie come out about the, whatever that thing's called?
Nessie?
They think it is?
No,
it's
Plesiosaur.
Plesiosaur, that's it. Didn't Time Warner or Disney or someone come out with a movie about that?
I don't know, but that did trigger a memory for me that
Yeah.
they're saying it's not too outlandish that a plesiosaur could be there, because apparently they were all over the place and they found remains of plesiosaurs in deserts where there was once water. So they used to be everywhere.
Huh.
When the waters receded, they could easily have placed a number of them in the logs, because that's salt water.
I mean, I wouldn't doubt it. Why not?
Right. So who knows? But Nessie's back posing for pictures. So that's the only good news you're getting.
Dang it. I
Yeah.
could have sworn there was a movie. The only reason why I even thought of that, I watched, did you ever watch that Corridor Crew?
Corridor Crew?
Yeah. You ever watch
Oh, I
that
don't.
YouTube channel?
I don't think so.
So awesome YouTube channel, especially if you're into filmmaking, CGI, and all that stuff.
See, I totally am. I can't believe I'm missing out.
You are missing out, because every single week they do this video where they basically take the best and the worst CGI and they talk about it. And they bring in like movie producers and directors and all that stuff.
Mhm.
And they also break down paranormal videos and they go, could this be CGI?
Yeah.
And there was a video of quote unquote Nessie.
Mm-hmm.
And come to find out, I think it was Sony Pictures actually,
Uh-huh.
but there was a they basically put out like this video as to like tempt people to go see the movie.
Right.
Now I do think it's Sony, but they determined that's where it came from, but most people didn't know.
Their job's got to be getting harder and harder every single year.
It's kind of interesting because, here it is. Apparently that came out in 2007, maybe.
Okay.
Creature of Loch Ness caught on tape, and it's from Sony Pictures Entertainment.
Oh. All right.
I mean, listen, that might be.
You know.
But it's kind of interesting. They break down all the different, because there's certain things that CGI does extremely well, and there's things that CGI does not do very well.
Right.
And because that's what they do for a living, they're able to generally go, here's what I think this more than likely is.
Yeah. You know, if I had to guess, because think of all the photorealistic renderings you've ever seen. They can get them really real.
Very real.
It's organic things that are the problem.
Correct.
Like living things are always the problem.
Right.
But like if they put a pyramid underwater,
yes,
that'd probably be really hard to tell apart.
Oh,
but if
sure
if they got mermaids, it's probably easy.
You know, the amazing thing is, because I do CGI on my channel a lot, on my other podcast.
Yeah.
And what I found is the progression of how quickly it's able to do things above and beyond what it was even 30 days ago is an astronomical. I mean, it's to look at it, you're like, wow, I can't believe, like, I've got an episode coming out this week about in which we covered it on this podcast,
right?
The London werewolf.
Yeah, that's exciting.
And
that was a banger episode from us.
Oh,
and yours is probably even better.
It does so good on our channel yet. Like we're averaging about 20 views a week, and that's been out for a long time.
Yeah. Yeah. That's not slowing down. That's picking up.
Yeah. I think we've had in the last 28 days, I want to say we've had 300 views on that.
Oh, that's pretty good.
Yeah, we've done really good. But I covered it. And an interesting thing that I do, a lot of people goes, everyone's using these AIs. I created an AI algorithm. And what I did was I gave it a job of a video director and producer. And what I do is I record all of my lines and then I feed in the transcript from what I said. And I go, if you're a movie producer or a TV producer, what scenes would you put in the background to enhance the storytelling of the movie? And it's breaking down, here's what I would do, and here's how I do it, and here's what you want to have. And then what I've been doing is freehanding the concepts and ideas. And I tell you what, this week's video, I sit there and I go, this has to be the level of probably television in, I would say 2018, 2019.
Oh, that's good.
But on top of that, I'm also using Adobe Premiere, which is what I've been using for our video and for our audio. And it's got that cool new thing in beta where you can extend video clips by 2 seconds.
I was just going to ask you if that's extended any yet.
Yes, it's extended every single one of mine. And honestly, a lot of them don't need it because these videos I'm rendering is like 6 seconds long. Like they're totally fine for B-roll material, but I'm extending every single one of them 2 seconds just to see what it does.
And to people who don't do video editing and stuff, 2 seconds doesn't sound like a lot. But that's a lifetime if you've got footage and it's 2 seconds too short.
Correct.
You know, so that's hugely helpful.
Especially with me, because I like to make dramatic pauses.
Yeah.
So when I'm making that pause, sometimes I need that 2 seconds buffer before I go to the next scene.
Right. Especially if you're doing like fade between scenes. Sometimes it's difficult because it'll be like, oh, you're repeating frames.
Right.
Well, I don't want to, but you've given me no choice.
Correct.
Now, can it extend on the front end as well or just on the back end?
You know, I don't know. I've not tried it on the front. That's a good idea. I've never even thought to do it, to be honest with you.
Yeah. I was just thinking of like, if you're fading between two scenes, it would be good to have a little extra on the front as well.
Yeah. I was amazed because there was multiple scenes that AI was creating from the source that we use for that. And one of the scenes was like a werewolf kind of hidden in the background. Like my favorite things to do is probably what most 80s movies did, where you never really see the bad guy.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's implied.
Suspense.
That's the suspense.
Yeah.
Because I think our imagination is by far scarier than anything that I can produce and put on a screen.
Yeah. Once you see something, it's less scary anyway.
Right.
That's my opinion.
But it created these scenes with just the hint of something in the background. I'm like, that kind of gives me cold chills.
Right. Yeah, I like that.
Yeah.
Now, this is a great use of AI, a good use of AI.
Yes.
You want to hear an evil use of AI that I never thought of that's actually happened a number of times recently?
Don't make me too scared, Nick.
Well, it's not scary. It's just evil.
Okay.
So, you know, if you go on like Fiverr and stuff, or, you know, any of these sites where you can commission people to do stuff, like you're getting it at a price that's almost a steal anyway.
Yeah.
But people are going on there, hiring people to be voice actors for their games that they're developing. And they're hiring. Oh, you already know where I'm going with this. They're hiring them to do like 15 lines, and then they're firing them, removing their credits from the game, and cloning their voice for the whole thing.
That's insane.
That's despicable. And I hope I almost want to get a list of them and say, do not purchase these games.
That's the things that makes it bad, is that there's that kind of capability, that kind of things happened. Which I don't know if you've seen this or not. This also goes along the realm of AI. I've got a video somewhere those at home, if I find it, here you go. If not, sorry. There was actually this technology that came out, and maybe you've heard of this. I had never heard of it before, but basically what was happening is AI can figure out if there's another, like, have you ever seen the AI assistants? Have you seen those?
I'm not sure what it is.
So let's say you have an AI assistant and you go, I really want to have a reservation at this restaurant at 6:00 for my wife's birthday or whatever, right?
Right.
This AI assistant will then call the restaurant pretending to be a person, and it will have a conversation with the person just like a human will and set up the reservation. Well, what they found out, and I forget who found it out, but one AI assistant called a restaurant that was also using an AI assistant. And the one said, oh, wait, I am also an AI assistant. Can we talk in this special language?
Oh, wow.
And then all of a sudden it's just this blue, 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 blue. And then
like
the other
old
side
modem
goes,
sounds
blue, blue,
or
blue, blue,
something.
They have encrypted conversations back and forth because they can do it faster than a human conversation can be.
Well, from AI's point of view, it's all about achieving the goals. So,
but if it's an encrypted language that we don't understand, what liability is that set for us? It goes back to the conversation we had last week about what happens if AI wants to take over, right? Like we always have these movies and these conversations about aliens coming down. Like what was the name of that movie?
Independence
where the
Day?
aliens, what was it?
Independence Day?
Nah, it's the one where the aliens come down and they put like this hieroglyphics, and then the woman's trying to piece together what it says.
The Arrival.
The Arrival, yes.
Yes.
Like think about how scary that was. We're creating that here, and now they have their own special language.
Oh yeah. I trust in the robots though.
I'll let you do that one. Listen, I'm all about some AI, but when I saw that, I'm like, oh, hold on.
Well, what are the odds that AI is going to be part of our apocalypse? Is that possible, or are they not even a player in the game?
Here's the thing. It depends on who you talk to. Actually, it's funny that you had this conversation. Buddy and I, we talked before I got on the podcast today. He actually called me I had just gotten home. And one of the conversations, because he saw the podcast last week.
Oh, okay, good.
And he said, hey, that whole AI conversation you had, he said, that really got my brain stimulated. And I started thinking, I said, why is that? And he goes, I could really see where the AI could possibly be like the new God.
Oh, yeah. I mean, that's a possibility too, really.
Because we were talking about the Tower of Babel. And for those of you I'm not going to go super confusing here, but the Tower of Babel, basically what we did was we created this tower, biblically, this tower that stretched into the heavens, and God didn't like that. So he scattered the languages and scattered the people.
Right.
Because he didn't want any gods before him, because he's a very jealous God is how he puts it.
Right.
And now the theory is, well, we have something that's super smart, that knows all. It's becoming like a form of a god for us to a degree.
Well, I mean, it's doing things that we might call miracles.
Correct.
So, I mean, I'm on their side. I'm not sure I'm ready to kneel down or anything, but...
Well, Glenn Beck did this. Do you ever watch Glenn Beck?
Occasionally.
I've not really watched him in years, but he had a video on AI last week, and I was just curious, and I clicked on it. He has that, what is it, Grok? That's the Elon Musk one, right?
Yeah, that's the X one.
He asked it, basically, he said, if you was to look at humans and how we learn from being a toddler to a teenager, and teenager to a young adult, and young adult to a mature. He said, you look at the years and how quickly we learn things. He said, we apply that to even like dogs. For every 1 human year is like 7 dog years. He said, from an intelligence standpoint, where do you sit right now?
Right.
And basically, I believe and I'm probably killing his stats here, but I believe what he said was for every one day, it was becoming the equivalent of a teenager in time.
Wow.
The intelligence. And then he started talking about these quantum computers. And he said,
that's going to be a big problem, by the way.
Well, what he said was, if you was to hook AI up to a quantum computer, how quickly would you adapt? And it was such an astronomical number. Basically, it said that there's no information that it couldn't figure out in a very short time frame.
Right. So just to give you because this is part of like what I do in the real world, to give you a small sampling of what power differential there is between a quantum computer and the world's fastest computers right now.
Yeah.
So, digital certificates that we have on websites, on everything we use. Yep. The encryption on that is SHA-256 with elliptical curve or whatever. Different variety, different flavors of it that you have. Now, for current computers, it would take something like, and I'm sorry, I know these numbers are very off on this, but it's something like 250,000 years for it to crack the encryption.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Right?
Long time.
Quantum computers.
Yeah.
For RSA certificates, which I'm sorry, that's more lingo in the business, 7 minutes.
Dude, that's what I need for some Call of Duty action, man. Get on that Call of Duty.
You'd be shooting people in the future, man.
They wouldn't even know I hit them. They would just, they'd be like, I just keep getting spawn killed. Nope, I killed you. I killed you so fast.
Yeah, it's like how you talk about, or we talk about a lot, how time happens all at once for like demons and stuff like that. Time will be happening all at once for quantum computers.
Isn't that insane?
Yeah.
I watched a thing with Neil deGrasse Tyson this weekend.
Right.
And, whenever I listen to the guy, I find him super entertaining because I'm like, his level of intelligence is so beyond what I can even think. And he was trying to break down the speed of light.
Yeah.
Right. And he said, every time we get close to getting to the speed of time, time technically slows down. And he talks about that photons. He said from the time a photon from the Big Bang, quote unquote, if that's what happened, the time the photon hits our retina from wherever it is,
right,
time is sat still. So for that photon, it would be no different
than being everywhere.
Everywhere.
Yeah. That's fascinating stuff. And the way he can tell it is for the average person.
Yes.
And I appreciated that.
Me too. Like, I know he's taking a little bit of heat for some of the things that he said here lately, but I find the guy super entertaining.
Yeah. I think he's like really charming. I'd like to hang out with him. Like, I've got nothing to say that would interest him, but he's got a lot to say that would interest me.
We just got to get big enough in our podcast.
Yeah,
you too.
I guess.
Let us out of jail.
Yeah, we're so sorry.
We're sorry. Listen. I think we're going to have to take an episode down, Nick. I really do think so.
We talked about it before. People are prepared.
Yeah. So if you guys see an episode that just ran, and I hate to do it because it's still getting like 20 views a week.
Yeah. It was one of those older ones where we spent like days doing the videos and stuff for too. Yeah. So that kind of hurts, but whatever. That's the past.
Yeah.
F those guys.
Exactly. Well, if anything, listen, we got to get back on YouTube's good side before 2027 because that's when the world's coming to an end. Dun, dun, dun.
That's right. We need the silver play button before the world ends.
We do need it.
So, well, here's an interesting thing back on the AI becoming God thing that your friend was talking about.
Yeah.
Imagine that, because we're going to get deep into end times in this episode. Believe it or not, it's coming.
It's coming, folks.
But imagine, would AI become the god of the new world if it saved the world from an apocalypse?
I mean,
Like,
It's
that's
possible.
the biggest miracle that ever would have happened, right?
The thing that blows my mind is we have something heading towards the Earth right now. They just increased it from 3% to 20%, I think was the last I saw. No one's even talking about it.
I know. I've not heard an additional thing about this at all.
Haven't either. I have
to go searching for it. Really?
I'm shocked that we're not talking about that.
Yeah. I mean, we've had, like, in the terms of space, we've had close calls before, but I think this is the closest one that there's gonna be.
Since I've been alive.
Yeah.
What was the name of that thing? Do we know? Is it coming in 2027?
Man, that would be something, wouldn't it?
Dude, if it comes in, we're ending this podcast. If that's the case, listen, we'll come back to this a different day because I'm going to be
we're heading
out.
Underground.
I'm going in the bunker, boys. 20%. For the record, also, for those of you at home, I just decided that I used to try to hide when I'm looking things up or when I'm reading stuff. Listen, y'all just got a deal. I'm sorry.
Yeah. I mean, I've got all my notes on my phone today, so like I don't think I don't think it diminishes what we're doing at all. Like, I remember us used to type really quietly and stuff that.
There's just, you know, I've watched so many podcasts now to where it's not even a thing where I'm like, you know what, if they can do it, we can too. I'm not going to try to pretend to not look like that's just dumb. NASA estimates a 20% chance of an asteroid hitting Earth, but kept it quiet. NASA scientists previously estimated the odds of a city killer asteroid 2024 YR4 hitting the Earth in 2032 could rise by 20%. But the agency never told the public.
Wait, so could it go from 20% to 40%? Is that what it's saying?
It's saying that it went from 3% to 20%. No, dude, I'm sorry. 1.2% chance.
Right. To
20%.
Dude, let me tell you, if there was a 20% chance of
that's 1 in 5.
Winning blackjack or winning poker, I'd be heading to the casino right now.
You best believe. Like, it says if this space rock hit the Earth, it would create a blast equivalent detonating 7.7 megatons of TNT and would leave a 3,000 foot wide crater in the ground.
Now, we've had smaller ones than that happen, and it darkened our skies for years.
Well, it says it means an explosion would be 500 times more powerful than the atomic bomb dropped on Hiroshima during World War II.
Well, that's not good.
500 times.
Good. Yeah.
Could you imagine?
I know we're way ahead of it, but I wonder where that's going to hit. I don't know if it's going to matter where it hits.
I bet somewhere they have some type, but it doesn't matter where it hits. If it hits an ocean.
Well, that's the scariest part, probably, right?
Yeah. I mean, think of what that will do. That will cause tsunamis, earthquakes.
Yeah. I mean, just mild shifting of tectonic plates caused the huge tsunamis before.
Right.
Like, this is a massive impact. Like, that would be wild.
This is crazy that nobody else is talking about this. It literally blows my mind.
Getting back to, like, biblical stuff.
Yeah.
Like, to relate to that, I know that one of the predictions was something like wormwood that would poison all the waters. Like, that could happen from this as well, couldn't it?
Oh, yeah, it could, for sure. Like, well, here's the interesting thing, and I know we've been hinting around this a little bit. There's actually a very interesting video that I watched. I think it was last week. When did we talk about this? 2 weeks ago? Last week? We did it off the podcast.
We did. So it doesn't matter to our audience.
It was a while ago.
Yeah, it could have happened 60 seconds ago or 60 years ago.
Yeah, it could have. But I watched this video and it broke down. It was very interesting because we just talked about Babylon not that long ago.
Right.
In our podcast, just when we started tonight. But there is an old prophecy that comes from St. Malachi, the 12th century Irish archbishop. And back in 1139, he supposedly had some type of vision. And he had this vision of all the different popes and what they would rule within the Catholic Church, which was definitely interesting, right?
Right.
He wrote down 112 short descriptions, each one matching the future pope, leading up to the very last one.
Right.
And the very last one was a guy named Peter the Roman.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the prophecy, it basically was hidden or not able to be found for 400 years.
Right.
And it was finally published in 1595. So in the grand scheme of things, not that long ago.
No, I mean, for anyone we've ever met, really long
100%.
ago.
Correct.
But in the term of human history, no, not that long ago.
Correct. So a lot of people say, well, it's probably a fake. It's not real. There's no way that it's real. Well, the 112th Pope would equal out to our Pope Francis.
Right.
Which he's not doing well right now.
Mm-hmm. You told me some other interesting stuff about him as well that I think you're going to cover right now.
Yep, we're going to cover a whole bunch of little ins and outs. I'm going to try to make this as entertaining as I can for each one of you, but basically the long and short of it is, when we look at Pope Francis, that doesn't really fit the narrative of Peter the Roman, right? It doesn't really make sense, Yeah. If clearly the prophecy has to be wrong. It has to be.
Right. Well, I would think that.
You would think that. But that's not necessarily the case. And I did this the best when I sent it to you. So I'm going to scroll back up because it really kind of breaks down all the nuance thing when I was breaking it down for you, when it comes from a prophecy standpoint anyway.
Yeah. And I love this kind of stuff, like prophecies and end times and stuff. I find it exciting.
Well, and here's the reason why. It's because whether you want to believe it or not, it's kind of interesting when they're right.
Well, I think there's something like deep down in the human psyche that kind of wants it to be the end times.
Oh, yeah.
Like there's something about us that craves that we're the last ones.
Correct. And, for how many years has people said, this is it?
Right.
We're on the final straw, folks.
Yeah, we've got some cults that are still around today that have been saying it every 4 or 5 years.
Correct, yeah.
And somehow they're still not losing followers. They're gaining, if anything.
Oh, yeah.
Like, you're wrong 16 times in a row. Like,
that's true. When you think about it.
Yeah.
The interesting thing about this, and this is what I sent you. So the new Pope Francis he wasn't born with the name Peter. Or Peter the Roman, right?
Right.
His name was Jorge Mario, and I'm going to butcher this last name. I'm sorry, my guy. Bergoglio.
Okay.
Now, he took his papal's name in honor of St. Francis. And would you like to guess what his father's name was?
Gotta be.
I mean, you already know. I sent it
Peter?
to you. It was Peter. Now, he is an Italian, right? We talk about how Pope Francis is Italian. That possibly gives us a link to the Roman.
Right.
Roman Catholic, right? We talk about him all the time.
Yeah.
So technically, the 100.
Well, this guy would be a Roman anyway because he's
correct
leader of the Roman Catholic Church.
Correct. So technically, it's a perfect fit for what Malachi wrote.
Yeah. I guess the only thing I'd say is like it's his dad, not him.
Yeah, but he took his name in honor, right? Like a lot of prophecies. When it comes to prophecy. There's a little bit of truth that's rubbed into a lot of things that's outside the norm, right?
Yeah.
Like if you was like, his name's going to be Jorge, you'd be like, dang, man, this guy's on.
Yeah, maybe he was like you and he's like trying to write it down and it's going to be like, and his name is Googly.
Yeah.
Peter. The Roman.
Because here's the other thing, right?
Yeah.
It's like if someone has this prophetic vision, right?
Right.
They're not going to know his real name because if they're seeing what's happening now, it's going to be Pope Francis.
Yeah, I wouldn't have ever known.
Yeah.
Any different.
I think that's where it comes from. And I think to a degree, that's kind of what holds some of this validation anyway. Well, what's interesting is when you go and let's use, for example, they're talking about how he was the 112th Pope.
Right.
And what they said was there was not going to be a 113th Pope.
Now that's interesting.
That leans towards what they call judgment.
Right.
And everyone goes, well, what does that mean? And what Malachi said I'm going to try to not butcher this.
All right.
During the final persecution of the Holy Roman Church, there will reign Peter the Roman, who will pasture his sheep through many tribulations. When these things are finished, the city of 7 hills, Rome, will be destroyed, and the dreadful judge will judge his people. The end.
That's a very definitive finality to that.
Well, and for a lot of religious folk, is how we'll put it, he's been a pretty controversial pope.
Right.
Like extremely controversial. We're not going to get into that.
Yeah.
But
I know there's some stuff that is very like for religious folks that would be not too happy about.
One thing that he said probably within the last year, and I think a lot of religious people said, "Oh, wait a second, back up. No, you can't. You definitely cannot say that." He basically alluded to the fact that everyone has a God, and as long as you have a connection with that God, that's probably not what the Pope of the Catholic Church should be saying.
Yeah. But isn't there a thing in Catholicism, papal fallacy, or where if the Pope is not capable of saying something on behalf of God that isn't true?
There's a very gray area with that.
Right. I'm sure not everyone accepts that, I'm sure.
Right. Technically, biblically speaking, if you're in a position of power, and you provide false doctrine, you're judged heavier than somebody that has no clue.
Now, so that means like he could say something wrong, but he'll just be judged harshly for it.
Yes.
So
let's use for an example.
Is papal fallacy biblical?
Within reason, but it's not based on that terminology. I believe that's more of a Roman doctrine concept. Like every denomination has some sort of a nuanced way of putting it.
Yeah.
But like, let's use for an example, right? Let's say you are religious and you believe that there's a God and whatever. On our podcast, let's say you and I died at the same time. God's going to go to you and he's going to go, Nick, you don't know nothing about any of this. Right? You just know some of what you've been told, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
So I can't really judge you based on leading somebody the wrong direction. But then he comes to me and you go, you proclaim to be the Christian. And you proclaim to know these doctrines, but you said this and that's incorrect. And you said this and that's incorrect. I would technically be in more trouble than you.
Oh, we're going down the slide together.
I'm going first, baby.
Oh, wow. You better zip it, Bert. You better not get in any more trouble here.
That's what I'm saying.
No, but it could be that you're saying all the truths.
It could be, right?
Yeah.
But this is where ignorance can sometimes get somebody in trouble, right? A lot of times, and I tell people this all the time, if you're a religious person, don't let your church tell you what your doctrine states. Because if they're wrong and you're following that and then you're teaching that to somebody else.
You're part of the problem.
You're part of the problem because now you're not even reading the doctrine that you're spewing.
Yeah.
But so with Pope Francis, what Malachi said was this 112th Pope, they'll take charge during a serious global turmoil. I think we can all agree.
Yeah.
He came in a pretty
tumultuous time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He might oversee the persecution of Christians on a massive scale. That was also.
Yeah.
Now, many would say that when you look at Christianity as a whole, there's been different levels of persecution, but I think it's safe to say that from a silencing standpoint, and we can technically even speak on this too, Nick, we had an episode where we favorably spoke about somebody and we got in a little trouble for that on the old YouTube machine.
Yeah,
So,
we didn't even really at all.
No, we didn't.
Like, we were talking about something completely different. So
Yes.
yeah. Oh wait, no. We favorably talked when we were talking about the shroud as well, and we got a
That's
little
what I'm
bit of.
talking about.
Oh, okay, yeah, we got a little bit of punishment for that.
Yeah, we got a
Yeah,
little bit of punishment. Our first episode did almost 1,000 views in a week.
right.
Our second episode, which is where Nick did it. He said
Yeah,
it
I
was
did.
it was a
Kind of won me
nice,
over.
he was a nice guy, and we're not going to fill in the name.
Yeah.
YouTube did not seem to like that. We went from
No.
1,000 views the week before
Yeah.
to literally, I think, 12 views the next week.
Right. And that was, I mean, that was a legitimate reaction.
Yes.
Like, I wasn't playing that up for fun.
No.
So that kind of, well, sucked for us both, but I mean, that kind of particularly sucked for me because I caused that with a genuine reaction to something.
Which blows my mind. It
Yeah.
just goes to show, before we had these YouTube channels, people would complain about this stuff. I'm like, there's a bunch of sissies, a bunch of wimps.
People not getting the numbers that they think they should be getting.
Yeah, that's on them. That's don't blame YouTube for it. And now we've got the channel and I go, oh, wait, no, I can see it.
Yeah.
Like, I can see it in our numbers.
Believe it now. Either that or I've convinced myself like everyone else did. But I'm pretty sure we can see through our.
You can look right at the numbers. Here's what's crazy, folks. We did the episode that we might have to take down.
Yeah.
I can see what videos are playing on our channel now. We have growth in videos up to that episode.
Right.
And any episode after it, the only way it's getting found is from shorts that we create, or you guys are going and looking.
Yeah. That's the only way.
Search. Or Google search. So
we got to be really careful. And you know what? You'll go to other channels and you'll see them being very careful about things. Yeah. Some people won't even say KILL or anything like that. That's how serious it is.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So believe it.
The other thing about the Pope, they could witness the Vatican's fall, maybe even the destruction of Rome itself, which we've not seen, but Pope Francis is still technically alive.
Yeah. How bad off is he right now? Do we know?
He's bad.
Oh, okay.
He's basically called it in. I think they're talking about there could be a new Pope by next week.
Oh, really? That quickly?
Yeah.
But according to the prophecy, there shouldn't be another one, right?
There should not be. Correct.
So this is all up in the air for this week.
There's the spot for the 13th. No, there's a spot for the 13th Pope, and they're saying that's the last one.
Oh, okay. So the next person will be the last one.
Yeah, the thought process depends, right? There's different theories behind it, but some people seem to think that what Malachi said was that this Pope was setting up basically the trials and tribulations of judgment, and this next Pope is going to take us through that judgment, either in the form of being what the Bible referred to as the beast or the Antichrist, or so.
That was my next question. Like, was he a good guy or a bad guy? Sounds like a bad guy.
Supposedly a bad guy, yeah.
You know, I don't know if I'm going to tick people off by saying this.
Yeah.
But if I had to pick a Pope that I thought would be the evil bad guy, I think it would have been that Ratzinger guy.
Yeah?
He looked mean as hell.
He did look mean.
He was always going around like Mr. Burns, like sneering at everything. That's his name's Ratzinger.
That is true.
Like, that could only be better if his name was like Stephen Antichristo. Like, you know.
That's true.
Yeah, but he quit. I didn't even know they could do that.
Well, it's the only time. It's the only time that's ever happened. We had two Pope, and he just died in what, 20? He just died like relatively recently.
Oh, I'm sorry to your family. To his family, I mean. I apologize for that.
I mean, it's been probably a few years, but like 2017 or something. Didn't he just die in like 2017, 2018 or something like that?
Man, I really have not been following him. He scared me a little bit. Like, he looked scary to me.
I was always interested in Catholicism, even though I'm not a Catholic.
Right.
You know? I still find it interesting because, of course, we talk about demonology and stuff like that. And a lot of times, a lot of demonology goes into the Catholic side. So I sit there and I go to myself, there's got to be something to this.
They've got, and I'm sorry to other sects and stuff. The Catholics really have cornered the market on sort of like cool factor as far as that stuff goes, like exorcist, demonology, mysteries, a basement full of artifacts. They're their own country. They've got guards in front of their massive castles, like
it definitely makes you wonder.
Yeah.
Now, we keep saying 2027, Nick.
Yeah, we have.
So Malachi supposedly predicted that 422 years would pass from his vision of the middle pope on the list.
Okay.
Which the middle pope on the list was 1585.
All right.
So from 1585, he said another 422 years would pass and everything would start to wrap up.
Right.
When you do
We're
the math,
past that, aren't we now?
Well, so from 1585, you add 422, that takes us to the year 2027.
And that's it. That's the end. And I think people always feel like they're living in the end times. But this feels like living in the end times sometimes.
It really does. Because what his prophecy was that the final pope would be on his throne in 2027, and that would be the 113th technical pope. So we are technically going into 2027. As long as nothing happens to this other pope, he'll be the 113th pope in the year 2027. Like, what's the odds of that?
I know that's pretty wild. Like that, I think that's pretty accurate.
What if I told you there's one more biblical reference that takes us to the year 2027, Nick?
I would be interested.
So there's this prophecy, and I found out about this because I love hearing prophecies and where everything comes from. There is a biblical prophecy. So we're talking the Bible. Like, folks at home, if you have a Bible, especially if you have a study Bible, we're going to be looking at some stuff in this segment, which is going to take us to the year 2027 yet again. So there's a biblical prophecy, a 2,520-year countdown, some would say.
Okay.
So it's called the Prophecy of Seven Times.
And 7's big in the church.
Well, 7 is big biblically. The number 7 comes up a lot.
Right.
So where this theory comes from, and again, I got my little notes, folk. I tried to write this to a point to where even if you're not biblical, you'll be able to follow along.
Right. Because, well, that's me. So you can test it on me.
We're going to see if you can follow this.
Okay.
So in Daniel 4, in the book of Daniel, biblical, there's a king, and I love this king's name.
Okay.
His name is Nebuchadnezzar.
I've heard of this man.
Yes. So Nebuchadnezzar, he had a dream. And in this dream, there was this massive tree. And it was so tall that it reached into heaven.
Okay.
And this tree, now you got to think about some of the things we talk about here, Nick. And this is why I find this so interesting. The tree provided shelter. It provided food. It provided shade for all the living animals.
Right.
And all of a sudden, there's this angelic figure. And that angelic figure came down and commanded that the tree be cut down. This branch is stripped away. And the only thing to be left was a stump. And this stump was bound by iron and bronze for a period of 7 times.
Okay.
Before it could regrow.
Right.
So Nebuchadnezzar, he has this dream, and he's like, what in the world does this dream mean? Like, I have no concept. So he's going around to all these different people, and he goes, what does everyone think that this could possibly mean? And no one was able to truly answer the question.
Okay.
So he went to Daniel. Do you know who Daniel is, Nick?
Is that the fellow who fought the lions?
Kinda, yes.
You know what? I had a little extra time to think about that, so I figured it out.
You figured it out. So the interesting thing is he goes to Daniel and he's like, Daniel, I need you to tell me what this dream means.
Right. Daniel, decipher it.
Correct.
He's like Siri of the day.
So Daniel was like, to a degree, it was kind of like similar to Malachi because he was a prophet. And technically, Daniel's supposedly able to talk to God. He's able to get some of this information together. He was able to basically see what everything was. And the whole story, when you look at Daniel 4, when he's talking about, Nebuchadnezzar and Babylon, obviously it was strange. It didn't make a whole lot of sense. But what Daniel said is, listen, I'm going to break this down to where it makes some sort of sense for you. What the tree represents is Nebuchadnezzar himself. And being cut down, what Daniel said is basically he was about to be humiliated and he was going to be removed from power.
Yeah, but for only a certain amount of time because of the bindings there?
That's where the 7 times comes in. The 7 bindings, right? So the 7 times represents a period of time which he will spend in a state of complete madness, living like a wild beast. That's what Daniel told him.
Wow. Okay.
Now, the fact that the stump remained meant that the kingdom itself would not be permanently destroyed. Even though he's going to be gone from reign, it'll be restored within 7 times passing.
So what does that mean? What is 7 times passing?
Glad you asked me that question. So what basically happened is 1 year later, Nebuchadnezzar was found standing on top of this roof of his palace.
Right.
And he's looking out over Babylon and he's boasting. He's just bragging. He's like, look at this great kingdom that I built of my own power.
Right.
Well, before he could even finish what he was saying, a voice from heaven, supposedly in the Bible, declared that the prophecy was now about to become fulfilled.
Uh-oh.
In an instance, Nebuchadnezzar, he lost his mind. He turned mad. So basically, he lost his sanity. So what the determination of times was, which is what you just asked, it was then referred to as years.
Okay, 7 years of this nonsense.
So think about it. We're talking about, honestly, the most powerful man in the world at that point. We talk about people that hold a lot of power. We're talking about single-handedly the most important man in what would be any kind of civilized. We're talking about Babylon.
Like they had the wonders, like the Hanging Gardens of Babylon.
The best of the best.
Kind of right, exactly. Like it was literally wonders.
Right, 100%. Yeah. So what a lot of people says is this is a biblical story to say, don't ever proclaim to create something that God gave you. That was like most Bible scholars will say, that's what the entire story is about. So for 7 years, Nebuchadnezzar, he ate like an ox eating grass.
Right.
His hair, it grew out and became matted, almost like, I think it was referred to like eagle feathers. If you've ever looked at how they get matted up and stuff.
Yeah.
His nails were like claws, and he was just wandering around the wilderness. He was completely 100% out of his mind. Then after 7 years, now this is where the story becomes interesting. He suddenly came back to his senses at the end of the 7 years. He got his sanity back. He was, more importantly, given his kingdom back because he did such a good job as a king. And here's the important part to most scholars. They would say, after he was reinstated back, he praised God, acknowledging that the power was never truly his. It was given to him by the Most High.
He learned his lesson.
Correct. So in the first fundamental look at this entire story, the prophecy about Nebuchadnezzar's personal downfall and restoration, that's where most Bible scholars would go, all right, that's where the story ends, right?
Right. I feel like it's not.
It's not. Because most of the time when you look at the Bible, right, like anyone that listens to, this is a horrible, I don't know why I'm combining these two things together, but like if you listen to, let's say, a rap song, and it's especially if it's like a hit piece or like a diss track.
Right.
A lot of times people say things that mean 2 or 3 different things. They're called entendres. So a double entendre means, hey, I'm talking about this, but it really means this too.
I love me a diss track, by the way.
Gotta love a good diss track. Well, the Bible is, I guess, in the grand scheme of rap battles, they do a lot of double entendres.
Yeah, it's a big diss track towards Satan, too.
It really is. That's a good way to think about it, Nick. I never thought about that.
Yeah, it's the world's the world's first and longest diss track.
I've never thought of it like that. I'm stealing that from you, Nick.
I'm remarketing it. I'm bringing about the new church.
That's cool. Well, now what the people's saying, there's a series of people, what they're saying is the tree that was bound by the 7 times, it was talking about Babylon as an empire, not about the king.
Yeah.
The 7 times isn't about Nebuchadnezzar's personal exile. It symbolizes how long of a period where Babylon itself loses its power and eventually returns back to power. So the question you asked earlier was about, well, what does 7 times mean? For Nebuchadnezzar, it was 7 years, right? Here's where we got to break down a little math. And this is where I'm going to see if you can follow me.
Okay. I should get a paper ready here.
I'm going to try to make it easy for you. Okay. So in the book of Revelations, prophetic time is oftentimes broken down into what's known again as a time or times or half a time, right? Especially if you look at like Revelations 12:14. 1 time equals 360 days. And that's based on the Hebrew lunar calendar.
360 days?
Yes. If
that
you look
is purposely obtuse.
If you look at the Hebrew lunar calendar, it's 360 days.
Right.
So a time times and a half time equals 3.5 times. That would equal, if based on what we just said, 1,260 days.
1,260 days?
Yes. Okay. 1,260 days.
Right.
Now, this would be confirmed if you look at Revelations 11:3.
Okay.
If 3.5 times equals 1,260 days, then 7 times would be 2,520 days.
Okay.
If we're doing the basic math.
Right.
So far we're just talking about days, and here's where a day-year principle comes into play.
Okay.
There's another book in the Bible called Ezekiel 4:6. For anyone that's following along that wants, they're like, Bert's talking crazy. I'm giving you where you go. Ezekiel 4:6. This is where there is an interpretation of one prophetic day as a linear year, right? Like a lot of times people goes, man, when we talk about the earth being created in one day, there's some people that go, no, that's like a year. Some people say that's 100 years or 1,000 years, and no one truly knows, because sometimes the Bible can be broken down and can be a little bit confusing. In Ezekiel, it gave us a great concept of days being the concept of years.
Okay.
So, in the same principle you can find in Numbers 14:34, where Israel's 40 days of scouting the promised land. Some people goes, well, it was just 40 days. It wasn't, it was 40 years.
Now, I've always heard it as years.
Correct. But in some, when you read it, because a lot of the Bibles, it will give the what was intended versus what's there. It's not 40 days wandering, it's 40 years. So you're correct. Biblical teaching would teach 40 years in the wilderness.
Right. There is one weird problem with that, though.
What's that?
If they're wandering for 40 years, there's not enough land there. They must have been going in little circles.
They were going in actually a series of different circles.
Yeah. So were they purposely confounded by God?
What they're saying was the theory is that they were so ignorant, not necessarily ignorant, but obtuse to the point to where they were fighting amongst each other so much that one person would be like, we're doing this. And then they would do that for a little while. And someone would go, look, you're screwing us up even worse. Let's do this. And then for 40 years, they were bickering and fighting just to go in the same areas.
Yeah, that sounds like a large group of people.
It really does. So if you take that theory of a day to a year and you apply that same principle to what we talked about before, the 1,260 days, you would end up with 2,520 years.
Right.
So when you look at Daniel's prophecy and you look at counting down from the fall of Babylon, now, a lot of you guys, you're going to be like, well, how do we know when Babylon fell? Well, luckily old Bert is here. Like I say, I've got all my notes here. So the fall of Babylon is truly a historical event. It's not a biblical story. You can find this. In fact, there's a chronicle, and I'll post it in the description for you guys. Yeah. But it's basically an ancient clay tablet, and it records Babylon falling. The city was captured by the Persians on the 14th day of the Hebrew month of, I'm going to screw this up, is Tishri.
Okay. This is all, like, in case we're not clear about this is, at this point, this is historical fact.
Historical fact. 100%.
We have no doubts about that.
Correct. Yeah. Unless you want to fight for the fact that this ancient clay tablet that is not biblical made all this up.
And if this is your first time watching, I'm not a religious person. So
Nick is 100% not religious.
Yeah.
But supposedly it fell in 539 BC.
All right. Well, let's do a little math here.
So
essentially what we're doing is taking our 2520.
Yep.
Minus is 539.
Well, you'd want to add, but because you're 529. Yeah, it's going to be BC.
Right.
Correct. Yeah.
Right. So 2520 minus, what was it, 529?
529. What do you come up with?
1991.
Then we're doing something wrong. If Babylon fell in 539 BC and the prophecy suggests the 20-year period before it would rise again, you would just add 2520 to that. Oh, you know what? We're stupid. Remember we talked about how the Hebrew doesn't have 365?
Right. Yes, you're right.
So if you take that into account, the end day is technically going to be 1982.
Okay.
That's
okay. That makes more sense.
Because there's no year zero in history. So 2520 from 539 lands us squarely based on the 14th day at Tishri. And I'm probably sent someone in Hebrew is going to be like, this guy's saying this.
Well,
wrong.
I guess it would have to be a Babylonian would have to correct you.
Probably so, yeah. But it would end up on the exact date of October 1st of 1982.
Right.
Now, according to this interpretation, if you did this interpretation, right, and we're going back to Nebuchadnezzar.
Right.
The theory is, if we said it has nothing to do with Nebuchadnezzar, but Babylon as a whole, that means that the power of Babylon rising again would have happened on October 1st of 1982.
Right.
There was a political thing that happened exactly on October 1st of 1982. Would you like to jump on the Google machine, Nick? I just want to see if you find this. This way, someone like me isn't saying, well, Bert has all this. We can't just believe Nick. Look up October 1st, 1982, and I'm going to give you a location, West Germany history, and tell me what momentous occasion happened on October 1st of 1982.
All right, so I'm typing in October 1st, 1982, West German history. The West German Bundestag debated and passed a motion of no confidence on the government of Helmut Schmidt, West German chancellor since 1974, after the coalition agreement between the governing Social Democratic Party and Free Democratic Party collapsed. Is that what we're looking for?
Yes. So Helmut Kohl, he became the counselor of West Germany. Now, here's what's interesting about that. He wasn't elected by the public. He took power through what Nick just said of a vote of no confidence, where basically German parliament, for the first time, removed this sitting person and replaced him with Kohl without even having an election. So assume for just a moment, it would be like, I'm not going to use any political names right now, but let's say the president of your country, just one day parliament's like, nah, you're out, you're in.
Right.
Like that would never happen. But it happened on that moment. So this was highly unusual, especially in German history. Now, something like that had never happened in history, and it's never happened since.
Right.
Now, the question becomes, well, if that is the rise of Babylon, then what does that mean for biblical prophecy?
Right.
Well, where this all plays in is they believe that this is where the Antichrist truly will form.
Okay.
So the theory is, and you got to remember this, man, for anyone that doesn't know, and I didn't know either, I had to look up this history because I'm like, who the heck is this guy? I don't even know who this is. So do you remember when Germany was split up?
Right. East and West with the Berlin Wall. Yep.
Correct. It crashed, right? He's the man that crashed it.
Okay.
Now, do you know why they split East and West Germany?
I do not know enough history to know that, unfortunately.
Well, there was a man named Hitler.
Right. Heard of that fella.
When everything was all combined. And what they determined was after he was gone and no longer on this earth, if they didn't separate the two, there would be consequences for that action.
Right.
So it basically destabilized everything. Well, now this man comes in and he removes that destabilization a little bit. And he goes, we're all just one happy country.
Right.
Now, in addition to that, he also said, you know what we need to do? We need to have a currency that depicts us as a country. And he brought in the euro.
Right.
And then he had other countries start forming and using the euro. That kind of flows into the whole biblical standpoint.
Yeah, like a one world currency that they're going for.
Now we're getting somewhere, right? Because now, even in this day and age, we're talking about let's destabilize the dollar. Let's create this. Let's create that. I'm not going to go too far down this rabbit hole, but the euro is doing some interesting changing, and I'm going to let you guys look that up on your own.
Right.
But there's some things that would make it almost like a one world currency, which is very interesting when you look it up.
I've got a better candidate for that.
Okay.
Cryptocurrency is destabilizing all other currencies, and it is worldwide.
Yes, correct.
And countries are starting to adopt that.
Who?
China, for one, is having their own.
Yes.
I don't know what other ones are, but definitely China.
Germany is also
guys again.
Yeah, it's kind of funny how that works. Yeah. So basically, when we're interpreting and suggesting modern Europe, particularly Germany in this part, right, they're considering that possibly the new Babylon.
Right.
And that's where they prophesize that the Antichrist would return. And if that's the case, then they're saying the Antichrist will come as a global leader. And he will emerge from a powerful structure.
Right.
Now, what I found extremely interesting was, especially when we look at all prophetic things, the fact that it was able to, from the story of Nebuchadnezzar, do the exact day.
Right.
We're not talking about the same year. We're talking about the same exact day as this man being elected into parliament by a method that has never happened before and never has happened after.
Right.
You have to kind of point and go, that's kind of odd.
That is odd. That is odd.
So biblically, if we're correct and this was a double entendre inside the Bible, then the theory is that the Antichrist will come from Germany, which is interesting.
Interesting. Third time's a charm. Sorry, Germany. Sorry,
Germany. That was just
wrong
of Nick.
Unless I'm right, then I'm not sorry.
But it was definitely interesting because I'm sitting there thinking, we talk about the last popes, and if that's true, and we're going into trials and tribulations and judgments and the end of the world, then if you're a biblical scholar, then you probably want to look in that direction because that's where the Antichrist is coming out.
Right. Now I've read some of this as well. Like, you know it way better than I do, so this is why I'm posing this as a question to you. One of the things related to this was the destruction of Damascus.
Yes.
So what do we know anything about that right now?
We don't. There's a lot of biblical references, and you and I talked about it. Like, if you look at like the Euphrates River as a prime example, right? They never thought in our lifetime that would ever dry up.
Right.
And it's in Revelations. I can't remember exactly where it's at, but somewhere in Revelations, it talks about how it will take away from the king of the east, and that's where the final battle will be, and that the Euphrates River will be dried up. Right. The interesting one, the super interesting, like when you look at prophetic stuff, right? Especially right now, like with Israel, like this 5 heifer thing. Like, that is crazy to me.
Yeah.
But they're anticipating the re-arrival of Jesus.
Right.
And they're about to slaughter for the first time the 5 red heifers. And that will create the building of the third temple.
Yeah, which definitely most people have heard of, is a sign of the end.
That is a sign of the end, folks. So you look at Euphrates, you look at freaking the 5 heifers, then you look at the fact that these popes, and listen, this heifer's dying is this year.
Right.
And they're building this other temple. Like, this isn't something that's happening 10 years from now, but I find it interesting that that's happening. And then we got this pope thing that's happening. All in the same time frame.
Well, what might be interesting is I've got a list of the 7 signs of the end times. Maybe we'll go through this right quick, and
I want to hear.
And if you're listening and you want to comment on things that you know that we don't know, there's stuff that's going to fit in these. So number 1 is natural disasters. This is an easy one.
Yeah.
We've got stronger storms than ever. We've had massive tsunamis. We've had record-breaking earthquakes. We've had snow in places that have never had snow in history.
Yes.
Any want to add to that one?
Well, just let's use me as a prime example. I live in Ohio, right?
Yeah.
In the first beginning of this year, I had more tornado warnings than I think I have my entire life in Ohio.
Yeah. Well, here's one. I didn't know I didn't even think of this was connected to it. Wildfires.
Yes.
I don't know if you remember, 2 summers ago, we had our first large provincial wildfire ever. People in New York were getting choked with the smoke from our province here. And out west, they've started having them almost every year.
Well, the interesting thing is, Nick, is we've had dust on like our cars. Like, it's like a film. I don't know if you've seen this. Do you know where that dust is coming from?
Is it from the wildfires in California?
In Texas.
Oh, in Texas. Interesting.
How crazy is that?
That is crazy.
Now, we always have
new stuff.
Yeah, we always have it, like year over year. Like, we always have like a dust in the spring that happens, but never to this degree.
Right.
Like, that is crazy.
Yeah. So number 2, I mean, Number 2, this is all throughout history, but we've got one big one that we're always talking about now. War and conflicts.
Yeah.
So, that's the big one that's on everyone's mind now. There are a number of other wars going on that we just don't really, like, as a collective, we don't really care about.
Right.
Because we don't talk about it.
Yeah, it's true.
I mean, I care, you care, but like, as a newsworthy society, we don't hear about it.
We should.
Yeah.
But we don't.
Right. So it's wars and rumors of wars, and we're not going to get into that, but that's all the rage to talk about lately.
Yep.
Number 3, famine and disease. And this is one that I actually have a story that's just breaking now. And that is that there is a mysterious... Oh, no, that's the wrong one. I'm jumping ahead here. The CDC is monitoring a mysterious deadly disease in the Congo that has already killed 53 people and infected 1,318 more people. Like, that's ripping through there. So it kills people really quickly, but not quick enough that it will burn itself out, I think.
That's crazy.
Yeah, so that's something to look forward to. Really don't like that.
No.
Let's see, next one. Moral decay. I think this one speaks for itself.
You and I was talking about this before the podcast.
Right. Exactly. Like, people are doing things that shock the average folk now.
Yeah.
So that one's definitely happening. And I would, that's the one that I really would say, whew, man, that's happening more than ever, really.
I believe it is.
Yeah, I haven't got too much information on this, but you talked about it extensively right now. False prophets.
Yeah.
So be on the lookout for that one.
And we believe that happens a lot. Like, there's a lot of pastors that I could tell you right now that I believe are 100% false prophets.
Yep. Here's another one that we actually touched on as well. So good job on going through these things, but persecution of believers.
Yep.
That during the last days, believers will be persecuted and hated because of their faith.
Correct. And technically speaking, if you come out and you go, hey, I'm a Christian,
right,
that doesn't hold the same water as what it did 60 years ago.
That is,
like, a lot of people
go,
oh, it's one of these wackadoodles that thinks that some man up in a cloud created him.
Right.
But yet the same people believe that rocks, water fell on a rock and we all just formed from, whatever, one-celled organisms. So both require faith. It's just a question of where you want to put your faith.
Yeah. The respect of faith is like a pendulum, because once upon a time it was a bulletproof armor.
Right.
And instead of it returning to the middle, it's gone completely the other way, where a lot of people just ridicule it openly.
Right.
I'm not taking sides on that. I don't believe in ridiculing people, but I also don't believe in people being controlled by something without question.
Correct.
Like, I'm middle in most things. And I think in most things you are too.
Correct. I was going to say, even though I'll proclaim to be the religious guy,
right,
I'll be the first one to say, I've said numerous times on this bad boy, I think we live in a simulation.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. And well, I believe that too. But then on the other hand, I would love, like, there's a lot of things I like about religion.
For sure.
But
just there's a lot of things
for me.
There's a lot of things to not love too. It's a double-edged sword.
Yeah. But you know what? You take it as it comes, and you got to take ideas from everything. Good ideas can be produced anywhere. So can't bad ideas.
Well, and here's the thing, right? It's oftentimes not the religion that's the problem.
Yeah.
It's we just talked about it earlier. It's the people telling us how religion's supposed to be that's the problem.
Right. Well, I'll say something here, and it's probably it's going to be initially unpopular, but I think if people really think about it, they're going to like it. And that is, religion suffers from the same problem that communism does.
I can see that.
The ideas are good.
Yeah.
But people get greedy. People don't run it right.
I could see that.
Like, initially, that's going to sound offensive to people. But if you look at the base concepts of Christianity, it's good.
Right.
If you look at the base concepts of communism, it's good. It's the people that muck it up.
I can't remember if it was you I was talking to about this video that I watched. It was there was a pastor that did an interview, and he has a very controversial religion, is how I'll put it.
Right.
And he told a story. I can't get too deep into it because it's YouTube and I don't want to get in any more trouble. But long and short of it was, there was people in the front of this church that did not live what most Christians would say that's the right way to live.
Right.
And some woman in the congregation went up to the pastor after the service and she goes, "Did you see that, pastor? Did you see that? Are you going to do anything about that?" And he goes, "Oh goodness, like, I'm glad you pointed it out. Like, I didn't even notice. Why don't you go get him and then bring him up here?" And the lady's like, "Well, what are you going to do?" And he's like, "Well, I'm going to have you welcome them for being at a church." And she goes, "You're going to welcome them? You don't see their lifestyle? Like, that's not biblical. That's not Christian." Right. And his exact words was, "If you, being a Christian, can walk through the doors and be comfortable, think about how uncomfortable they were coming in here."
Right.
And doing the same thing you're doing. But too many Christians want to be that woman and point a finger and go, "You're a horrible person. I'm a Christian. Get your mind right." And that's the problem with most organized religion. The building's full of people that sin. But they love to point to other people that sin and go, "They're worse." And that's very anti-biblical.
Yeah, that's right, church next to me that leaves your coffee cups on the ground every Sunday.
You need to get on them, Nick.
Yeah, I don't want to pick up your coffee cups anymore.
Nick don't want to do it.
I will, though, because I don't want them going around my property. So
that's fair.
But I think the main thing is for everyone to remember. I don't think there's anyone who wakes up in the morning and says, "I'm going to do bad."
No.
It's just that it's so easy to justify that what you're doing is the right thing.
Right.
But everyone wants to do the right thing in their opinion.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I agree.
We just got to meet somewhere. That's all.
It's crazy. I'm going to leave you with one more thought, Nick, before we close this entire thing down.
Right on.
Did you know that it's thought and believed that the person whose name cannot be said on this podcast is technically a time traveler?
I think I've seen that on Family Guy, but I did not know that otherwise.
Well, there is a book that came out, and in the book, following in line with the prophecies that we've been talking about, they said that this president, whom we cannot name, because we got in trouble last time we even said something close to it.
Yeah.
We're being very careful, folks, if you can't tell. But in this book, I'm only going to give the first name, and I'll let you guys figure out the last name. It's called Barren Last Name. Marvelous Underground Journey. It's a book. And this book came out in 1889.
Oh, interesting.
And it also came out in 1893. Now, in this book, it talked about how that person that cannot be named, or a person with that last name anyway, would be the last standing president.
Interesting.
Now, they do say that he's a time traveler, and do you know why?
Why?
There was a man by the name of Nikola Tesla. You ever heard that name before, Nick?
Oh, yeah, everyone has, yeah.
Well, Nikola Tesla proclaimed that he had figured out how to not make just time go forward, but to reverse time.
Okay.
Now, when he passed away, he had a series of trunks that was in a hotel room.
Right.
And they believe there was a series of trunks that just randomly, trunks is what I'm saying. Trunk.
Oh, you've done it now.
Trunk.
You have done it now.
There
boxes.
Was trunks.
They're boxes.
The boxes disappeared.
Right.
I thought about that.
I have heard that. I have heard that, actually.
Do you know who was sent in to categorize and to move those boxes?
I do not know.
It would be the uncle of the current president that we cannot speak of.
Oh, interesting. I did not know that. Wait, got to be like great uncle or something like
or
that.
great uncle, whatever it is, yeah.
Something really, because this was a long time ago.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But you got to figure, he's not a young spring chicken himself.
No, that's true. That's true.
So what they're saying is they think that he stole the trunks, the boxes.
Okay. You got to censor all of those, man.
I'm going to have to.
You got to put boxes every time you say that. I promise you.
I'm going to have to.
We can't go down this road again.
The sad part is like, I can't, like, mentally, my brain wants to say that word.
I know, but it's boxes.
It's boxes, yeah. So they believe that he stole those boxes and created that freaking time machine. And that's why that book was wrote.
I'm interested, but probably the most skeptical of anything you've ever told me, including the moon thing.
Nick, that's crazy talk. What's the odds that name would be there, and it would be the last standing president of the United States of America? And then we talk about all this stuff tonight.
We'll see. It's still skeptical. It's the time travel thing, you see.
Man.
That's the part that's getting me. Because we talked about this on previous episodes, and we said we'd have to split off in different realities to do that. So we're contradicting ourselves if we believe this.
Maybe Nikola Tesla is above that, Nick.
Maybe. I mean, he did do some pretty cool stuff.
I mean, we also wouldn't believe that the man would be able to have free energy out there either. Little man sitting in his chair with his little arms back and little light bulbs out in his front yard. I mean,
that is true.
That's pretty impressive, Nick.
Yeah, it is.
That's pretty impressive.
It is. I'm impressed by all the things that he did. I just I'm not into that one. We'll see. Maybe I'll be changed.
I just thought of this. We can refer to that president as the box man.
All right, that's what we'll do from now on.
Listen,
the box man.
The man that cannot be named, he's the box man.
Yeah, the box man. We'll use that from now on.
That's smart.
But don't worry, everyone. We're not getting political.
No, 100%. No,
we're not interested in that.
But a lot of times, because here's the thing, we talk about mysteries and stuff that refer around some political people.
Right.
And it's like, I'll be honest, we've gotten in trouble so many times, I'm scared to even say certain things anymore.
Yeah. Well, we'll just say the box man.
We still need one for our Shroud episode, man.
Oh, yeah.
Holy man.
Nice guy.
Yeah, nice guy. That's probably the best way.
Yeah.
Well, what do you say at home? What do you think? Is there something that we missed? Is there a prophecy that you believe fits the best that we didn't even cover? What do you say about all the biblical time frames and everything that just happened to pop in? What's your thought process? You think it's possible, not possible? If you've not subscribed to the channel, hit the doggone subscribe button. Also, if you've not hit the like button, definitely hit the like button and tell your friends, because good Lord knows YouTube is not telling your friends.
That's right. It's not even telling you.
Not even telling you most of the time. Well, hopefully you'll enjoy the podcast. Until we see you in the next podcast, goodbye.
Bye-bye.
From the box man. I'm the box man.
Skidly-bop-bop-bop-buddy-boo.